Welcome to the Weekly MindSweep number 208, Curated Conversation Value. I'd love to begin today acknowledging that today is 4 years, 208 Mondays we've been gathering for curated conversation, and 208 weeks I've been writing the Weekly MindSweep. Thank you for reading, reflecting, and being part of this evolving conversation. Value isn't objective, it's learned, and it can be changed. There's a pattern I see across nearly every creative business I work with. Talented, thoughtful entrepreneurs who are doing meaningful, transformative work are pricing their offerings based not on facts, but on feelings, from comparison, from fear, from what feels emotionally tolerable to say out loud. And over time, that pattern doesn't just shape income, it reshapes an entrepreneur's identity. This is why value deserves a deeper conversation, not just as a branding idea or a pricing strategy, and not as a stand-in for personal worth. Instead, value is something we learn from our experiences, our upbringing, and our need for safety. After 4 years of writing the Weekly MindSweep, listening closely, noticing patterns, and encouraging honest reflection, I've seen this truth come up again and again. Value isn't objective, it's learned. We learn what things are worth long before we ever price a service or sell a product. We learn it from family dynamics, cultural narratives, early work experiences, and the subtle messages about who gets to ask for more and who gets praised for settling. As creative entrepreneurs, we carry these lessons with us when we start a business. We build on top of what we've learned. Today is the day that changes. A common myth in business is that value is objective. People think it exists somewhere in the market or that there's a right or fair number you just haven't found yet. But neuroscience, behavioral economics, and our own experiences all show us something different. Value is learned. We also learn it from marketing, on top of our money stories, especially when underpricing is called accessibility and burnout is seen as devotion. Our brains don't clearly separate what's objectively valuable from what we learn to value from others. Your brain uses the same system to judge value, whether you're looking at a clear reward or reacting to something like brand reputation, status, or trust. If marketing often links something with pleasure or belonging, your brain learns that connection. Eventually, just seeing a logo, name, or price can make something seem more valuable, even if it's more expensive. Your brain creates shortcuts. Cheap options start to feel risky. Premium choices start to feel safer. Certain spaces start to feel like your people. And all of this happens before logic ever enters the room. Since your brain judges value automatically, you feel it as a gut reaction or intuition, thinking this is worth it, without noticing the years of learning behind it. Neuroscience doesn't tell us what should matter. Instead, it shows us that what we treat as valuable over and over shapes the brain circuits that guide where you spend your money, time, energy, and attention. This isn't about spending more, it's about choosing with clarity. This means that value isn't fixed, and it can change. As creative entrepreneurs, we bring these lessons into our businesses, which are often very personal, built on relationships, and closely tied to our sense of self. That's when things start to get complicated. When pricing is tied to identity, money stops being about the numbers. It becomes about meaning, and that meaning affects everything you do. I notice the same pattern in creative businesses, no matter the industry, experience, or talent. Most pricing decisions aren't based on fact. They're based on feelings. Feelings of self-worth, comparison, fear, what people like us charge, what feels emotionally tolerable to say out loud, what feels familiar enough that it looks like what everyone else does. And numbers that feel small enough, if someone says no, we can blame the economy and not our talent, instead of actual operating costs, time and capacity required to deliver the work, how much energy you expend, your business's sustainability, and the transformation being created for your client. In reality, you may have never tallied your actual business expenses, calculated how many hours it really takes to deliver a project from start to finish, or considered the transformation your work creates for your clients. Behavioral economics and neuroscience call this subjective value. The brain does not just calculate objective worth, it builds value from experience, emotions, and context. Most creatives don't mean to undervalue themselves, they're just doing what people do when something feels scary. They avoid looking too closely. Clarity means you have to make choices. Choices brings responsibility. Responsibility can feel overwhelming when you already have a lot on your plate, especially with ADHD, where decision fatigue and executive load are already high. When entrepreneurs don't fully understand their numbers, it's often not about intelligence or skill. It's a response from the nervous system. For entrepreneurs without a steady paycheck, money doesn't come in on a regular schedule. Cash flow goes up and down. Timing is important, and income can feel abundant one month and scary the next, even if the business is doing well. When things are uncertain, the brain does what it's built to do. It scans for threats. Looking too closely at the numbers can feel risky. It can bring up shame, fear, and old stories like, if I look, I will confirm I'm failing. If I look, I'll have to make hard decisions. If I look, I won't like what I see. When you add today's market culture, which promises fast results, six-figure incomes, and easy growth, the urge to compare yourself to others gets even stronger. You're not just looking at your numbers, you're comparing them to someone else's highlight reel, or even worse, your own idea of their success. So it's not surprising that avoidance feels safer. For many ADHD entrepreneurs, money isn't just stressful, it's relational. There's another layer quietly running in the background, belonging. If you've learned that being safe means being liked, needed, or accommodating, then pricing becomes about relationships and not just about the numbers. Rates are adjusted based on what feels comfortable for you or the buyer. Boundaries become softer in the moment. Feeling uncomfortable is often explained away as being generous. And the stories we tell ourselves, they sound convincing. People won't pay that. That feels ridiculous. I don't want to be greedy. I should be grateful someone wants this at all. Who am I to charge that much? People like me don't make that kind of money. If I charge more, they'll expect perfection and I will disappoint them. But those thoughts are not real business insights. They're old beliefs about money, approval, and self-worth. The brain doesn't always tell the difference between emotional rejection and physical danger. So underpricing becomes a way to protect yourself. Over-delivering feels safer, and being exhausted starts to feel normal. It is time to take back your power. You do not get to decide how someone else receives your price. You do not know the reality of whether they see your offer as a stretch, a bargain, or a lifeline. Their reaction is shaped by their financial reality, their beliefs, their experiences, and their own nervous system history with money. A price that feels impossible to one person can feel grounding to another. A rate that triggers judgment in one body can signal trust in another. But if you aren't clear about the value of your work and your pricing is uncertain or inconsistent, the market doesn't have anything steady to respond to. Being clear isn't arrogant, it's steady. And that steadiness helps you stay grounded. That's also why comparison can be harmful. It shakes your steadiness right when you need it most. Market research has its place. Context matters, and being aware is helpful. But comparing without understanding can distort your sense of value. If you set your prices mainly by looking at what others charge without knowing their business model, costs, you're not really gathering useful information. You're just taking on someone else's way of coping. Often, their strategy has been shaped by similar fears, scarcity, and comparisons. So low pricing isn't really set by the market. It comes from a shared nervous system culture of stress and uncertainty. It's a culture that rewards giving too much, sees burnout as a sign of commitment, and praises access without considering the real cost. So, how do we change that? We start by making the numbers neutral again. One of the biggest changes I see when entrepreneurs finally look at their real numbers isn't about the money, it's about how they feel physically. Their shoulders drop, their breath deepens, their decision making steadies. When you look at numbers without judgment, they become neutral. They don't tell you who you are. They do not measure your worth, and they don't define your creativity. They simply show us what it really costs to do the work well. When you understand that, pricing stops feeling personal and it becomes about relationships, ethics, and sustainability. It's not about being cheap or overpriced. It's about being grounded. I want to be clear, knowing what an hour of your time costs doesn't mean you have to or should sell your work by the hour. It just means you understand what goes into your work, the invisible labor, the cognitive load, the emotional presence, the preparation and recovery required, the years of experience that informed what you do in minutes. This gives you a floor for packages and projects, not a made-up market rate. When you know what it really takes to show up fully, you stop turning transformation into just a transaction. You stop apologizing for depth, undervaluing your wisdom, and pretending the work is easier than it is. And when the market responds, it's not just because you've convinced anyone, it's because you became clear and consistent. That's why this isn't just a personal shift, it's a conversation for the whole community. You're not meant to do this work alone. Our relationships shape our stories about money, fear, and value. That's also why curated conversation has become an intentional space where numbers can be looked at without shame. Clarity is built collectively. Value is not debated, but examined, and you don't have to brace before speaking. When safety increases, truth follows. When truth follows, decisions change. Today is a great day to start looking at your real numbers with compassion. Take the time to understand what it truly costs to deliver the transformations you create. You can then decide consciously what an hour of your time is worth. Not to sell time, but to respect it. From there, pricing becomes less about what can I get away with and more about what does it take to sustain the impact I am here to make. Today marks 4 years of writing the Weekly MindSweep and 4 years of recognizing the story I tell myself has taught me. Value isn't something you discover. It's something you return to by letting go of old beliefs. It's there beneath the noise, the comparison, the old ideas about what you are allowed to want. And when you quietly reclaim it, you don't just set prices differently, you operate differently. You choose differently. You lead differently, and you rest differently. This week, instead of answering, what do I do? Ask, what feels different for my clients after they work with me? What becomes easier, clearer, or less heavy for them? What decisions do they make faster or stop avoiding? What do they trust more? Their thinking, their voice, their capacity? Transformation lives in the after, not in the list of features. When you can name the change you help create, pricing stops being about justification and it becomes about alignment. You don't have to do all of this at once. Value is not a puzzle that you solve. It's something you return to with one honest look, one steady conversation, one grounded decision at a time. And you don't have to do it alone. If you're ready to understand your real numbers, to make informed decisions for 2026, you belong here. I can help. Welcome. This is the conversation we're having now. Creative people valuing the transformation they bring and changing the market, one Monday morning at a time. I have 2 questions for you this week. How has your nervous system been influencing your pricing decisions? What does it look like to reclaim your value quietly without proving, performing, or defending it? Reply and share with me. Since you're already collecting your numbers for your taxes, this is a good time to pause and really understand what they mean. When we work together, you'll have a safe space to look at what actually happened in your business in 2025 without feeling shame, panic, or pressure to fix things right away. We separate facts from fear. We look at the numbers in a neutral way. Then we use real information to help you make clear, confident decisions for 2026. This isn't just about spreadsheets, it's about understanding what your work costs, the value that you bring, and how to build a business that feels good for you. If you want to stop guessing and start feeling clear about your numbers, I'm here to help. I also want to take a moment to talk about curated conversation. If this conversation sparked curiosity, resistance, relief, or a quiet, yes, this is it, you don't have to hold it alone. Curated Conversation is a weekly live space for thoughtful, heart-centered entrepreneurs to slow down, speak honestly, and explore topics like value without pressure to perform or prove. We gather to listen, reflect, and make sense of what's shaping our businesses and decisions together. If you've never joined us, your first month is free. Come sit in the room. Listen if you want. Speak if you're ready. Stay if it feels like home. Mondays at 8 a.m., start with coffee, belonging included. You can learn about this and book a free consultation with me at chickbookcreative.com.